Breaking news, Sony just launched the RX1R Mark III after a 10-year delay from the previous model. This is an amazing full-frame 60 megapixel camera that fits in the palm of your hand. I'll tell you all about it, but first I want to thank my sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace makes beautiful websites incredibly easy to set up. Whether it's a photography portfolio, your video reel, or any type of business, start at squarespace.com/Tony, and you can choose one of their beautiful templates to start out with. You could use their AI tools to help actually build your website and make it beautiful. Take appointments from clients, sell products, pretty much whatever you can imagine starts at squarespace.com/Tony. Try it out completely free for 15 days. So you can make sure that you can set it up and it's easy to use. And when you love it, the coupon code Tony will save you 10%. Thanks for sponsoring me, Squarespace. First, what makes this camera unique and so popular and such a collector's item, even a decade after the previous edition, is that it really fits in the palm of your hand. This is the smallest, most powerful camera mankind can make right now. It has the same 60 megapixel sensor that you'll see in the A7R V or the Leica Q3, or at least a very similar sensor, but the camera itself is so much smaller with really almost no sacrifices. So we're talking about 1.1 pounds, and it's a full frame sensor, just like you get in the most high-end cameras. The best full frame sensor in my opinion. And the lens itself, I think, is the best focal length for things like street photography, walking around. That's 35 millimeters with pretty fast speed at f2. The RX1R III has both the electronic viewfinder and a rear screen in case you like holding the camera up to your eye. The electronic viewfinder, nothing to be too impressed with, especially at this price point, but it's good enough. I don't think you're really going to be thinking about it too much. It's kind of small too, but so is the camera. Now the rear screen, I'm kind of disappointed with this. It's a fixed screen, which means it doesn't tilt at all. Pretty much every competing camera has some kind of tilt to the screen. The Q3, the RX1R Mark II, the A7C they all have screens that can tilt or flip. And I think that's so useful for the scenarios where you would use this. Like a lot of people hold the camera up to their eye all the time, but I'm a little bit tall. And that means if I hold the camera up to my eye, I'm looking down on people. So when I'm taking pictures of people, I'm almost always holding the camera out. Or if it's kids or dogs, I'm holding it down. And if I have a tilty screen, I can tilt it up at myself so I can clearly see the screen, compose my shot. If I don't have a tilty screen, I'm crouching down or getting down on the ground. That means I'm a little slower to respond. And honestly, it makes my composition a little bit worse because I think we're all a little bit lazy. I know I am, and I'd rather not crouch. So like the previous gen, it has a single SD card slot, not the CF Express Type A that we see in a lot of Sonys. The frames per second, not impressive at 5 frames per second, but for the types of shots that you do street, I think that's totally fine. And the buffer will keep up to 52 raw files. So you'll be able to shoot 10 seconds continuously. Let's talk about the shutter in this because it's really unusual. Like my Hasselblad camera, it has a leaf shutter built into the lens as opposed to a traditional mechanical shutter. This comes with some advantages and some disadvantages. The advantage of this is that you can sync your flash up to whatever shutter speed the lens is capable of. And that means that if you're using a flash outdoors fighting full sun, you could shoot without going into high-speed sync mode at up to 1/2000th of a second. I made a whole video that talks about how powerful and important this is for people shooting with strobes in the wild. Maybe this isn't a camera that you would pick up for outdoor portrait photography, but if that is something you want to try to do, I think that's really useful. Notice I said 1/2000th of a second, which happens to be the max shutter speed when you're shooting wide open at f2. If you want to use a faster shutter speed, you also have to shut the aperture down a little bit. This kind of makes sense because the leaf shutter is inside the lens and needs to close down. So if it's half closed down at f4 or f5.6, then it doesn't have to travel as far, and thus the fastest shutter speed can be quite a bit faster. But that's a downside because if you're in sunlight, you're pretty much going to have to shut down to f5.6 to not overexpose your subject. And that means you're not going to get all that beautiful background blur that you would get at f2. In other words, in full sun, you're sacrificing bokeh, and that's not a creative choice that photographers want to make. The other option here is to put an ND filter on front of the lens. My Leica also has a low max shutter speed, and I hate dealing with the ND filter and taking it off when I go back indoors, so that's a pretty big disadvantage. Now, if you want to use the electronic shutter, That's 1/8,000th of a second. So a lot of you are just going to be using the electronic shutter and forgetting about it. No, I know this sensor from the other cameras. It has a lot of rolling shutter. So you're not going to want to use the electronic shutter with something that's moving quickly, but for things like outdoor portraits, that should work fine for you. Another huge disappointing drawback here is that the camera doesn't have any sensor or lens stabilization, which that can be okay. Like the Hasselblad that I've been shooting daily with doesn't have stabilization and I'm still getting shots. But this is a casual camera that you might be using on the go. And I really wish it had some kind of stabilization. The f2 lens is fast. It will do well in low light conditions, but especially with 60 megapixels, camera shake is going to be pretty obvious. And you might even have to be shooting faster than the reciprocal roll in most situations, because even the smallest amounts of camera shake will show up on a 60 megapixel sensor. Beyond just getting clean low ISO images in low light conditions of still subjects, I also like to drag the shutter, use a long shutter speed for moving subjects, like your kid's going past on a carousel and you want to show a little bit of blur by panning with it, or somebody's driving past with a car. You really can't be going below like 1/30th of a second or so and expect to get sharp shots. And so that's limiting your creative choices. I really wish they'd given us some type of stabilization. Now, of course, you can use a tripod, but this is meant to be a small and light camera. And as soon as you add a tripod in there, well, suddenly it's big and clumsy. So a lot of us are going to be getting better results out of something like a Leica Q3, which is stabilized, or Sony's own A7CR, which is an amazing camera that has the same sensor, but is also quite a bit bigger. Let's talk about the video capabilities. This really isn't optimized for video. It does 4K video. It will do full HD at 120 frames per second. You can import your LUTs. So you could grade something in camera and kind of see what it was going to look like when you published it. It has the Sony's multi-interface hot shoe, which I really appreciate. You can put in one of Sony's lab mics or the DJI Mic 2 with their special adapter, or a shotgun mic without having to run extra cables. It has a micro HDMI port, a mic jack, and of course USB-C for pretty fast charging. Here's the bombshell. It's $5,100. $5,100. Now you're going to say, that's a lot, because you're comparing it against all these cameras that were probably released before the tariffs. But Japan has a lot of tariffs right now, and it seems like Trump is going to raise them even higher. Also, this is not a mass market camera. This is a camera for a few enthusiasts who really want the best possible image quality with a fixed lens. These are street photographers. These are people who prize small size over everything else. This is one of those times when less is more. And yeah, you're paying more to get less, because there's nothing this small, this light, with this amount of quality. And if that appeals to you, yeah, you're going to have to pay a little bit for it. Sony expects to actually be delivering these on the 31st of this month. If that price tag hurts you, just hold on for a second. You can also buy a little thumb grip, which really helps to hold it, because it's very thin, it's kind of square, it doesn't have a proper grip. That's $300. Fake leather case that does have a little bit of a grip in it is $250. And this one really got me. The lens hood is $200. Let's call them out. Those are wildly overpriced. The lens hood should absolutely be included in it. Now let's compare it to the closest competitors and the previous generation. First up, comparing it to 2015's RX1R Mark II. The lens is mostly the same, and going from 45 to 60 megapixels, in my own tests with really high quality lenses, I don't really find a perceptible difference. So I don't think the new sensor is going to really improve detail that you get out of it, especially with the same lens, but you'll get much, much better autofocus. And autofocus was a real problem on the RX1R Mark II, but this has the sophisticated eye detection, whole body tracking, animals, cars. Sony has the best autofocus in the business, and it's really exciting to get that in a small package. This supports touchscreen, because believe it or not, in 2015, Sony did not have that tech. But you're giving up the versatility of a tilty screen for a completely fixed screen, something I don't know that I can make that compromise. The electronic viewfinder isn't pop-up. I always thought the pop-up viewfinder was really cool in the previous generation, but the viewfinder itself was not very good, and so I tended just to leave it closed all the time. And so I'll definitely use the fixed viewfinder much more. The top of this is totally flat, so it might fit in your bag a little bit better, and it has a bigger battery, so we might expect better battery life, though we'll get our copy in to test it soon. Subscribe to see that full review. Now let's compare it to the Leica Q3. Leica Q3 comes in two different models, one with a 28 f1.7 and one with a 43 f2. slightly different price points, $6,700 or $7,400. Those are both significantly more expensive than the Sony, even though it seems to have exactly the same sensor. But of course, the Leica includes the lens hood, which is an extra $200 on the Sony. The Sony's 35mm kind of splits the difference between the two Leica models, and it would be super cool if Sony engineered a couple of different lenses and gave us options for people who want different things out of that. The viewfinder on the Q3 has about twice as many pixels in it, so it's going to be clearer. The Q3 has a tilty screen, but the Q3 also has half a pound extra in weight. That's a really big deal. Now, the frames per second are much more reasonable on the Q3 at 15 frames per second, and the Q3 will also do 8K. So as far as specs go, the Q3 is more camera. But as far as size and weight and price goes, the Q3, again, is more. You can also compare this to Sony's own A7CR, one of my favorite cameras out there. I'm pricing it here with the closest possible lens, which is the Sigma 35 f2. Now, the interchangeable lens rig here is going to be significantly bigger, but of course you have the advantage you could put on any lens you want. So it adds a lot of versatility. I also happen to think the A7CR is a better looking camera because you can get it with a nice chrome top, and that adds a little bit of style. And if you're going to be walking around with it on your shoulder, it never hurts to look good, right? Now, this setup with the A7CR and the lens comes to $3,700, whereas the new RX1R Mark III with its lens hood is going to run you $5,300. So you're paying a lot to not have interchangeable lens capabilities. But again, this new Sony is all about being small. The A7CR has the IBIS in it, huge technical advantage. That's going to let you get better quality images of still subjects in low light. It's also going to give you the creative freedom of panning, of showing motion blur selectively. The A7CR has a flippy screen instead of a fixed screen, but it weighs almost 3/4 of a pound more. Now, you will feel that when you're walking around all day. The frames per second are a little bit higher. Recently, Fuji launched a fixed lens medium format camera, and the Fuji is cheaper. It's $4,900 compared to $5,300 for the Sony with the lens hood. But believe it or not, the Sony is going to give you more background blur and better low light performance because the lens in equivalent terms is faster. In equivalent terms, the GFX has a 28mm f3.2 lens compared to the f2 lens on the Sony. That means that you have about a stop and a half more light gathering capability total on the Sony. And it will outperform in all those ways that you think are advantages for the Fuji, except for like dynamic range in ideal light situations where the medium format sensor will still shine. Now, the Fuji is 100 megapixels compared to 60. Fuji's GFX is a significantly bigger camera. It comes with a 3.2-inch tilting screen. It's a little bit bigger. The screen is more functional. The Fuji does have redundant SD cards in case you're a pro and you don't want to lose anything if an SD card fails. And the Fuji gives you the option of silver or black, though I don't actually think the GFX is that attractive of a camera. Again, subscribe to see the full review. If you do pre-order, please do use our link. I appreciate your support. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Squarespace, whenever you're making a new website. For a personal project, for business, you can get your own domain, which is so much more professional than being something@gmail.com. I like Squarespace so much better than social media, whereas social media just shows my most recent work. Squarespace, I use it to show my very best work. I use my Instagram to bring followers over to my portfolio. My portfolio is kind of really where I'm showing my skill level. And I would suggest that everybody out there do the exact same thing. Try it out today at squarespace.com/Tony. No commitment. You get a 15-day free trial. No credit card. You're just trying it out. You're just seeing how awesome it is. And when you love it, the coupon code Tony will save you 10%. Thanks for sponsoring me, Squarespace. Bye.